الحمد لله رب العالمين بارئ الخلائق أجمعين باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين ثم الصلاة والسلام على أشرف الخلق وأعز المرسلين حبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد وعلى آل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين المنتجبين سيما بقية الله روحي وأرواح العالمين له الفداء. قال الله الحكيم في محكم كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. فسجد الملائكة كلهم أجمعون إلا إبليس استكبر وكان من الكافرين. آمنا بالله صدق الله العلي العظيم. اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد. Mu'mineen and mu'minat, brothers and sisters, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept our a'mal in this holy month of Ramadan and grant us the opportunity to worship Him out of love, recognize His love and mercy, and therefore be like Him, be loving, be merciful, and worship Him out of love. Recognize love as the mercy of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as the one factor that the world revolves around. In the last few nights we spoke about the fact that out of His mercy Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala granted us the month of Ramadan to purify and to strengthen ourselves, or purify our nafs and strengthen us against our own nafs and nafsul ammara, to have better control over ourselves, our whims and desires, and God forbid sinful temptations, by abstaining from what is normally permissible, which is food and drinks. We learn to stay away from what is sinful. If we are not eating and drinking because God commanded, despite the food and drinks being permissible, then we should be more likely to stay away from anything that is not permissible, that is sinful. And that is basically a method or a great help from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to help us against shaitan, because in the month of Ramadan He has chained shayateen so that we can learn to deal with one of the problems, which is nafs, and that is the bigger of the two enemies in fact. Nonetheless, we need to make sure once the month is over, our great enemy, shaitan or Satan or Iblis, does not ruin everything that we gain throughout the month of Ramadan. That is his goal for sure, and that is what will happen if we don't take precautions, if we don't make sure that we prepare ourselves against shaitan. Oftentimes you'll find out that people's religiosity dies out. It's a season. The month of Ramadan is over and everything dies out. So how can we maintain some of it, if not everything? It is through our preparation against shaitan. Last night I spoke about the importance of gratitude, shukr, because shaitan wants us to be ultimately to not believe. كمثل الشيطان, I recited the ayah when shaitan said to insan, ukfur, disbelieve, deny God, be ungrateful. These are all the meanings of it. And kufr is lack of gratitude, or the opposite of gratitude, and it is also disbelieving or denial. So he commands, he says, ukfur. And when we disbelieve, he says, I have nothing to do with him. Inni bari'un min. And in other ayat, he explains that I simply, and in his words, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says that shaitan will say, I only invited you. I had no authority. He has no authority. He cannot force anybody to act in a certain way. He cannot stop anybody from acting in a certain way. He cannot physically stop us from giving charity, for example. He cannot physically force us to look at haram or do the haram things, whatever it may be. Therefore, he simply invites us, and those who have fi qulubihim marad, those who have diseases in their hearts that they did not purify, they follow him. Inshallah, we're not amongst them. Therefore, it is very important for us to be grateful. Gratitude is the opposite of kufr. The goal of shaitan is to make us kafir. And if we are shakir, we will not be kafir. One who is grateful to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and one who reaches perhaps the state of shakur, extremely grateful, they would never be ungrateful or disbelievers. Oftentimes our disbelief has to do with our lack of faith that reflects itself is in lack of gratitude, not knowing that God is the merciful, is the kind, is the generous. So we start questioning certain things as a result of lack of gratitude. We see half the glass and we focus on that, the half empty, obviously. Tonight I want us to focus on perhaps one, if we have the chance, maybe another, maybe two of our strongest defenses against shaitan. The second one I want to share is humbleness, humility. One of the very obvious characteristics of shaitan is that he was extremely arrogant. In fact, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in multiple ayat in the Holy Quran, He says, you have no right to be in the nearness in the garden of Qurb while you're arrogant. ما يكون لك أن تتكبر فيها. You have no right. You cannot have takabbur, arrogance. You cannot. In fact, when he refused the ayah that I recited, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala describes the refusal of shaitan, and he asked him, Astakbarta? Is it through your arrogance? And he declares him to have been arrogant by saying, Istakbara. When the command came that everybody prostrate towards Adam, ala nabina wa alayhi salam. Not in worshipping of Adam, no. That prostration for God in respect of the creation of Adam, ala nabina wa alayhi salam. So the command came, everybody in the angels prostrated. Iblis was with them, he was amongst them, he was not an angel. He was a jinn. So he refused. And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala described him as being arrogant. Imam Ali alayhi salam, in one of his beautiful words, he says, فَإِبْلِيسِ إِمَامُ الْمُسْتَكْبِرِينَ. He is the leader of the arrogant ones, Iblis. Satan, or the head of the family of jinn, perhaps. He is the leader, he is the head of anyone who has arrogance. In other words, if we have arrogance, we are following Iblis. Simple. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us أَلَمْ أَعْهَدْ إِلَيْكُمْ يَا بَنِي آدَمَ أَلَّا تَعْبُدُوا الشَّيْطَانَ. Surah Yasin, he says, did I not make an agreement with you, a covenant with you, did I not take a promise from you, O children of Adam, that you don't worship shaitan? What is worshipping shaitan? It is not to stand towards him and pray. It is not to call his name. It is to follow him. If we follow him, then we are worshipping him. And he is Imamul Mustakbirin. He is the leader of the arrogant ones. If anybody has arrogance, they're following shaitan. Very simple. And by following him and by being arrogant, specifically this character of arrogance, it completely ruins our faith to the point that the hadith says one who has even a little bit of arrogance within them will not be admitted to paradise. لا يدخل الجنة, will not be admitted to paradise. One who has ذرة كبر, even a tiny bit of kibr or arrogance left in them. If we want to have defense against shaitan, we need to develop humbleness. One of the strongest weapons against shaitan is to be humble. I want to share a story, a brief story from one of our great scholars who was a marja at the time, and he was having a debate with another scholar who was not a marja. He was a mujtahid, but not at the level of the great marja. You know, a beginner in the ijtihad, because you have mujtahid from mutajazzi until you have mutlaq, and then they become marja. So this scholar, these two scholars were having a conversation, a debate, a scholarly debate. Nonetheless, the one who was less knowledgeable, he was not a marja yet, became a little rude, disrespectful towards the great scholar and the marja. And what he said to him was something along the lines that you don't understand, or what do you understand? In Arabic, like stifte him, something like that. What do you understand? And one who should be like a student to that marja. So when he said that, there was a gathering, not just them two. A number of scholars were present, most of them students of this great marja. When he said that, it was like he poured ice over everyone's heads. Everyone froze. It was a shock. Everyone was shocked. How dare he say that to the marja, to the great marja? So they were all shocked. Everyone went silent. The one who said it perhaps realized that he made a mistake. He didn't say anything anymore. And the teacher, the great scholar, didn't respond. And the rest of the scholars were just waiting to see what would the response of their great teacher be, because he accused him of not understanding or not being able to understand when he is perhaps in the state of his teacher or in the position of his teacher. So everyone's quiet for a little bit of time until they witnessed this great scholar. He got up, he came to the one who is younger and like a student to him. He sat next to him, he held his hand, shook his hand, kissed it, said, "I'm sorry," and got up and left. So now everybody's shocked even more, because to them, the last thing they expected, he disrespected the teacher, yet the teacher comes and says sorry and kisses his hand. So they were shocked, to the point that they couldn't keep it. They had to question their teacher, not just ask him, question him. How could you do that? They literally came, asking him and questioning him. Why would you do that? How could you do that? He was rude to you. He should have apologized. He didn't apologize. Everybody was expecting him to apologize. He did not, and yet you went and apologized and acted like that. He said to them, I'll tell you what happened. It's nothing to do with him. It was a battle between me and my nafs and shaitan, perhaps, because that's what happens. Nafs is working against us, nafsul ammara, and shaitan helps, or perhaps assists in, misleading us. So he says it was a battle. My nafs was saying, say something. Perhaps shaitan, because we don't recognize that it's shaitan. We think it's our nafs. Between my nafs and shaitan, the voice within me was telling me, respond to him. Tell him what do you understand? You're still a little student who's, hardly had any experience, or, you could have said many. And my nafs kept telling me, tell him. And I'm saying to my nafs, no. The response, idfa billati, Quran tells us, idfa billati hiya ahsan. Pay back with what is better. So I want to be paying back. So in this battle between me and my nafs, not only did he says to his students, he said, not only did I keep that control, I basically struck shaitan with a big slam. How so? He said, because I decided that I'm not going to say anything, but because my nafs or shaitan, or between them, they insisted a lot, I made sure by me getting up and apologizing and kissing his hand, my nafs and shaitan is crushed. So next time they leave me alone. This is what humbleness does. It is a huge weapon against shaitan. If you ever feel like, how dare he says something to me, as soon as you say me, how do you know who I am? As soon as you hear that within yourself, or does he know who I am? As soon as you hear that voice, tell your nafs, you're nobody. Tell your nafs, you're nothing. You're a servant of God. If he disobeyed, and this is the last word I want to have, if he disobeyed God with your regard, because what he did is disobedience to God with your regard. Who am I? He's disobeyed. And the best payback, Imam Zain al-Abidin alayhi salam says, the best payback in that situation is to make sure you obey God in his regard. And what does God want from us? Fa'fu wasfahu, forgive, be kind, be forgiving, be merciful. This is the result of humbleness and humility in the court of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to grant us the opportunity to fight against our nafs, fight against shaitan, especially as this month of Ramadan is over. We ask him to make us victorious in our battles with our nafs and shaitan. We ask him to make us amongst those who listen to what's said and follow what's best. Walhamdulillahi Rabbil Alameen. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa alihi at-tayyibin at-tahirin. Shurukun.
الحمد لله الذي